was a while for me, like 3 or 4 weeks, I think. I always forget how noisy it is. And at times it gets really shaky. It feels very rickety. There's beautiful Long Island City. That was cool. I just saw my reflection in that truck. A reflection in a truck. A poem. How about now? It's a beautiful day out, and I've been staying close to home for about the last couple of weeks. Experiencing like full days of just continuous aggravation and frustration. Full days wasted on things that don't work. Software doesn't work, a website doesn't work. Person can't do what they claim they can do. A lot of just like outright lies that lead me down a rabbit hole of thinking I'm going to accomplish something, but it just doesn't happen. Kind of interesting. Those two guys were inspecting the emergency phone. All I did was open and shut the door, and I think check for something, but I've never seen anybody do that. Resign myself to the reality that one day I'm just going to get clobbered by one of these bikes. It'll probably be a hit and run. less of that to worry about when they finally open the other side. They're going to open that traffic lane on the other side to pedestrians only. Should certainly be a better view from over there. Although I do enjoy seeing the Roosevelt Island tram float by. I guess I won't be able to do that up close anymore. So I'm talking about the tram. One of the simple pleasures about crossing on this side of the bridge. The tram has one of the best safety records in all of mass transit, maybe the best safety record. But I still know a ton of people who are terrified to ride that thing. And I guess I can see why. I mean, you're just like a little drop in the sky. It's not supposed to be like that, but I'm not touching it. I've had my encounters with these phones. Basically, if you touch it, it sets off an alarm somewhere, and I don't need that. Because I did that once, and unwittingly summoned the full force of the NYPD. Far more volatile situation than I even realized as it happened. By simply picking up that phone, they thought I was suicidal. And I came a lot closer than I realized to being involuntarily institutionalized. But I talked my way out of it without realizing I was talking my way out of it. There's no harm in that phone being off the hook because it's not like anybody's going to be making an incoming call to that thing. time to get rid of the 181. I already auto paid for 6 months, and it's like gotten really stupid expensive. And it's not like it increases in value as they keep raising the rent on it. I don't know. It'd be sad to let it go, though. It's been my permanent address for 31 years. Or probably more like 30 years. I don't remember when I got it exactly, but 90 or 91. You know what's funny is I still have to adjust my sense of space after all these years. They moved the boxes something like 15 years ago, and the 181 used to be somewhere over there, like maybe 3 or 4 feet over. And to this day, every time I come in here, I still expect it to be at its old location. It's funny how things stick with you. And this place is still a ghost town. There's some activity, but virtually any time I used to come down here, the line would be back to where I'm standing. Rockefeller Center is still pretty damn quiet. Midtown in general starts to feel like itself again, but still not this place. They still have some old phone books. Indeed, it works. As expected, the great Rockefeller Center payphone comes through again. Direct line to God. I was on the Today Show once, and at the end of the segment, Katie Couric said that I needed to get a life. I never talked to her directly. It was produced by some outside production company. I wonder if it ever crossed her radar that 25 years later I'm still dicking around with payphones. Still need to get a life. One thing I've never done in New York is stand outside this spot, this space where they, I guess, used to film the Today Show. Maybe they still will. One time I was traveling in West Virginia, and one of the locals out there asked me where I was from, and I said New York, and he's like, "Oh, so I bet I've seen you standing outside the Today Show." Yeah, that's what all New Yorkers do every day. We go out and stand outside the Today Show. Get our little chance at fame. I guess they do still film here. They're just not doing it now, because why would they be?
Intimately acquainted with means the way. It's a way of life, a physical and mental practice, and it is an Olympic sport, one that is absolutely dominated by our host country. Entering today's competition, Japan is already made 5 of the possible 8.
Thank you. I just scored a free can of tuna. They were giving them away.
And attend to small children by holding their hands. Have a safe and pleasant day. Hello. Thanks for riding with us.
Change in Jamaica with Neola, East Williston, Alberton, Rollins, and Greenville, and Sea Cliffs, and Streamland Coast, Locust Valley, and Oyster Bay. Bars and Q Gardens customers, you must order one of the first 6 cars from Platinum.
No dial tone. This is one of the ones where I often see people using this phone. That one was working before. That was one of the reliable ones. I think one of these works, the other one not. Or that's what it was like last time. There's your dial tone. Yep, that connected to God. And this one doesn't work. This didn't work last time. That's dial tone for you. Yep, God is there. This one also works. Oops. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, it has dial tone. It just took a couple of seconds to wake up. Yep. Thank you, God, for accepting the charges. And this is the one that's pretty well hidden. But not from that guy. Proving once again Virtually any time I come through here, people are using these things. Although to be realistic, that dude might have just been using the phone for purely theatrical purposes. Didn't look like he was talking to anybody. This one worked last time. And it still does, even though it's missing part of the handset. Yeah, it works. I'm not even going to bother with the other one. It's dead and done.
Do not sit on the steps or the handrails. Baby strollers, push carts, and golf carts or similar devices are not permitted on the escalator. For your children's safety, do not allow them to play on or near the escalator. Attend to small children by holding their hand while riding.
Welcome to Long Island Railroad Penn Station.
Please be careful while riding the escalator. Please watch your step in a normal car.
So I circled back on that dude who was at the payphone, and he was pretty clearly not talking to anybody. He was just hanging it up and picking it up and just looking slightly disturbed, I guess. Welcome to Penn Station, right? I can't decide if I want to walk back home or not. Let me get in this shade. So my mapping app says I've walked almost 8 miles. And I'm certain it's actually more than, it's got to be more than 8 because I always fall out of coverage inside Rockefeller Center. But speaking of mapping apps, I got mine back. I had to give up on my maps for about a week or so because all of a sudden the app that I use to track my every step suddenly started chewing up incredible amounts of battery. I don't know why, I just started doing that. So I turned the app off and the battery lasts all day now. So I finally did what I'd been thinking about doing for a long time. I found that old Galaxy Note 5, which was doing nothing in my closet. And what I didn't realize until recently is that when you cancel your phone service on one of those things, the GPS is still works, still enabled, and there's no charge to use it. So I just use that thing as a dedicated GPS tracker now. Then I like my maps. I look at them as evidence that I was here, evidence that I went somewhere, evidence that I existed.
falla. Y no falla. Dios siempre me da orgullo. Mira ahora, yo estoy solo. Y ella pudiera ir, venga, que lo voy a funcionar, muchachos. ¿Sabes qué? Llamada. Claro, ya ni ido a verme, ni ido a verme. Pero yo sé que ya se queda la mía porque no hay
the Link NYC stone thrower or brick thrower or whatever he was using is back. I think it's been a couple of years now since the dude went around with some heavy object, a brick or a rock or something, and he pelted 40 of these screens. Each screen cost $5,000. And when you add it all up with procurement and labor and everything else, that little rampage probably cost the company about $500,000. And whoever did this looks like they got both sides. Usually, the guy that did this a few years ago only ever got one side. I'll link to that story when in the comment here under this video. It's pretty intense actually, because his motives were never made clear. What was his vendetta against these things? And he obviously wasn't worried about surveillance, which is what a lot of people are paranoid about with regard to these things. He obviously wasn't worried about that because he was caught on video numerous times, and he had to know. I mean, if he was worried about surveillance, he wouldn't have been doing this. So, never did get what his motives were. Yeah, if you look up Juan Rodriguez, Link NYC, you should find all kinds of ink that was spilled, digital ink, that was written about that little rampage of his. I mean, you watch some of the video, if you can find those, if they're still out there. The video that they captured of him using the cameras from the kiosks, the dude just looks angry as hell and determined. So my question had always been, what was his motive? I mean, if he was anti-advertising, there's all kinds of other things he could have gone after as well. And from what I read, his wrath seemed to be focused squarely on those machines. I remember finding where they sent him, what jail they sent him to. But that wasn't long after the incidents, so he was probably still locked up. So I don't know how long they would have kept him behind bars for something like that. But when COVID came along, I bet he would be on the. He might have been among those who was let go. I don't know. I'm gonna look that up when I get home. I remember finding the arraignment and everything, but I don't think he gave a statement in court. Never explained himself. Never delivered his manifesto. I wonder what that M52 means. This is 52nd Street and 1st Avenue. I mean, the 52 would seem to have some bearing on this being 52nd Street, but this is Manhattan building number 52, or is it coordinate Manhattan 52? I don't know. And I'm going to go ahead and walk back. I was ready to wimp out and take a train because my ass is feeling sore. But then I got this far up and I said, "Out of hell with it. Walk the walk." But a funny thing just happened a couple minutes ago. There's this dude that I see around Astoria. And most of the time there's nothing surprising about it. He lives like one street over. So we see each other, we just wave and say hi. Sometimes we make chit chat. But I also see this guy in some of the most far out stretches of Astoria, at least far out relative to where we would expect to cross paths. I was up on 19th Avenue once. It was just deserted on a weekend like it always is, and there he was. He's just walking the other way. And then another time, I was on Astoria Boulevard, somewhere up above Steinway, in kind of a no man's land. And there he was, walking the other way. He's a walker like I am, so it's not too surprising that this would happen, but never crossed paths with him in Manhattan until just now. There I was on 1st Avenue and like 57th, I guess. And there he is, and I'm like looking at him. I sort of spread my arms or held my arms out and just to get his attention. And we both just got a good laugh out of it. But our connection is actually pretty funny. We met at a bar one night, and we'd been talking for a while. And he said, we've been talking, and I said, "By the way, my name is Mark." And he said, "Thomas." And for just a split second, I was like, "How did you know my last name?" Then, of course, I quickly realized that his first name was the same as my last, and we got a little bit of a laugh out of that. Probably would have forgotten about it altogether, except that, we had our conversation, and he, God, it's dangerous up here. Anyway, we had our conversation, and then he went back over to the other end of the bar where he'd been sitting. And after about 10 minutes, he looks over at me again, and he's like, "Oh, wait a minute, you're Mark Thomas?" And I was like, "Uh-oh, what does this mean?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I love your receipts." And it was cool. He was perfectly sane. He wasn't like some kind of weirdo. But he said he'd been following my receipts, which I've been scanning and posting to my website since the mid-90s, I guess. He said he'd been following him for years. He just thought it was really interesting. And I was gratified by that. I quit doing that, by the way. I finally gave up. I think I made my point with that little project. But anyway, that's how I know that guy from the neighborhood, and he's somebody that I see all over the place. But we got a good laugh out of crossing paths in Manhattan. By the way, there's the old phone sign. But there was never a payphone up here. That's for the red emergency call box that has served no purpose for as long as I've known of its existence. But those things were essentially replaced by these, I guess. I love watching this thing, and I also like the shadow that it casts on the water down below. Won't be able to see this up close much longer. I think they're supposed to move pedestrian traffic over in January, but then they were talking about doing it earlier than that. So this thing is said to be finished with just some minor work left on the ground floor. It is called the Sven, S-V-E-N, and it absolutely swallows the old clock tower building, but oh, this is hurting my neck. Really making me dizzy. It went up pretty quickly, all things considered. I think it was about 2.5 years, which includes some stoppage for COVID. I kind of lost track of what this building is supposed to be. I think it's mixed residential and business, but I could be wrong about that. Well, this thing says it's all residential, so. But I think there might be some businesses on the ground floor. Some little shops and stuff. Certainly among the tallest buildings in Queens, if not the tallest. You wouldn't believe how this area has changed down here by Queens Plaza, Queensboro Plaza. Used to be just uninhabited. I mean, that's not really true, but let's just say sparsely inhabited. There are still some smaller houses over on the other side. Let's see how this side looks. This other building's also been gone up. Looks like a new Flatiron building. The building that used to be here is collapsed before Sandy, the superstorm, even arrived. But it was just coincidental. It had nothing to do with the storm. It was funny, the guy saw me shooting that last video, and when I stopped, he yelled over at me, he's like, "You interested in a home? You interested in buying a home here?" And I just laughed. I said, "That's way out of my league, way out of my league." And then just down the street, this Academy of American Studies has been in progress for probably about the same length of time, maybe a little less, as the Sven. There's just all kinds of stuff going up around here. It's kind of scary. Apocalyptic. But just to close that story about the receipts guy, what made that encounter what gave it a stroke of kismet is that if his first name didn't just happen to be the same as my last, he would have never known who he was talking to. You know, he would have had no idea what my last name was, or that I was the receipts guy. And I mean, as cool as it was to connect with a fan, if you will, connect with someone who got it and didn't think of it as a joke or a big waste of space, as a lot of people have indicated in the past. It was just kind of an incredible stroke of kismet. I don't mean to overuse that word, but I've been lectured on the fact that coincidence doesn't really exist. I'm not sure I believe that, but I've tried to avoid using that word, though, because I've encountered a few people who say there's no such thing as coincidence, even though most people would describe this as that. And they're probably right that that's not what this is. But like I said, when you meet a guy in a bar, you don't usually give your full name. At least I don't. So, and our conversation, I don't remember what it was about, but it certainly had nothing to do with receipts. That's why I love the story so much. 14.08 miles. I'm not really even done yet. I got to go out and do some other stuff today. But tell you what, though, different devices are going to give you different readings. This woman I dated, we would go on long walks, and she got us an app like this for her iPhone, and we would get very different readings. I mean, my app would say I'd walk 8 miles, and hers would say she'd walked 12 or something, or it could be the other way around. I don't know what contributes to that. And these things are definitely fallible, because at the end of one day that on a previous phone, one of the maps said I had walked something like 620 miles. If only. Anyway.